Hi, I'm Louise, and today I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on the movie Love Me. I got to see this at Sundance almost like exactly a year ago, which is crazy that it's actually getting a release now. I had already written my thoughts down and then I realized I hadn't seen a trailer, so I wasn't sure what was like public knowledge at this point. So in my head, I was like, any spoilers, like any plot details is going to be a spoiler. And then I realized, you know what, that may not be the case now that there's actually like a trailer for this. So anyway, I just watched it. So now I'm realizing that my thoughts don't really get into spoiler territory necessarily. But just a forewarning, if you want to go in blind, I do talk about some of the plot points because the trailer is really vague about kind of how things progress. I don't know. It establishes that yes, Kristen Stewart is indeed playing a buoy who's indeed talking to Stephen Yeun in space, who's a satellite. And somehow they develop a relationship. That's the basic idea of what happens. It is kind of a crazy premise, and I wish that they went further with it because it tries to be in the trailer kind of tells you this. It's trying to be like a thoughtful consideration on what kind of legacy is humanity leaving behind. It did, I will say, on the whole, this movie didn't quite resonate with me the way I would have wanted. And maybe part of that was the love story aspect of it. It genuinely, to me, it feels like it's a short film that's been pushed to 90 minutes. It could have been like a 40, 45, and that would have been plenty. But it just feels like it doesn't really get, I don't know, it doesn't warrant a feature length. The vibe is kind of Wall-E. So, you have your robots falling in love, but less about the love part of it and more like what kind of presence did humanity leave online and what would that look like to someone left behind who didn't experience it. Because basically, what ends up happening is the satellite character gives Kristen Stewart's buoy character access to the internet. And so the buoy goes through like YouTube videos and tries to figure out what makes a person. What that part of it I thought was super interesting more than their relationship. If it had just been Kristen Stewart's character trying to figure out what it means to be a person, I feel like that would have been more interesting to me. But throwing in the other character, which I don't know how he would have done this, but he just was fine and seemed less interested in humanity as a whole and kind of pushed into being a person. I don't know. That part of it just didn't quite click for me. And maybe they just didn't have the chemistry or whatever. But the part of the movie that was interesting to me is near the beginning when Kristen Stewart's character is kind of discovering what it means to be a person and how the buoy interprets what being a person means. And I don't know, latches on to this life influencer named Deja, who looks, funnily enough, just like Kristen Stewart, but if she were a blonde influencer online, and tries to recreate herself like Deja. And I think that's an interesting conversation, especially now that we have a generation of kids that have grown up watching influencers. I'm a little too old for that, but, people younger than me grew up with influencers as they, got older and had big life events and stuff. And I could see kids latching onto these people and being like, oh, I want to be like her, or I want to be like them. That's what I want my life to look like. And seeing it in such like a literal way, I was like, oh, that's an interesting idea. Let's lean more into that. And it kind of takes the like parasocial relationship into a different sphere because that person does not exist anymore. And so it's not like the buoy's like, oh, I'm attached to this person. We are the same. Like we are I want to meet this person, but it takes it to the next level where it's like, I want to be that person, which is interesting. I really thought that whole part of it was really interesting. And the fact that she's trying to recreate it, and maybe she doesn't realize that the influencing is like a performance. You know, a lot of influencers are putting on a performance, and I think we kind of forget that sometimes, but like they make it very obvious in the movie that that's not a realistic way of living, because they kind of start out recreating this like one video where they like eat ice cream in like footy pajamas and, you know, these really specific things. And the movie's like, this is what life is. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And it's just interesting because, I don't know, I feel like that can happen in real life too, where it's like, yeah, it is a performance, but I want my life to look like that. I think that's the most interesting part of the movie, so that's probably why I'm just kind of rambling about it. I really wish that the love story worked better for me. It's interesting that the Bowie Deja character really wants to have a connection, and I think that's what drives the whole plot, but I don't know. I just had a hard time being like, okay, I want these two to get together. And it's not even because they're like a buoy and a satellite. They look like people for a lot of the movie, whether that's like live action people, sometimes they're animated, you know, they come in like different forms. But I don't have a hard time personifying like non-human characters. I mean, I just watched Flow, which was amazing. No talking, all animals making animal noises. I had no problem personifying these characters and seeing their relationships to each other. You know, there was like the capybara that was like the leader and the steady one, and then the, you know, the lemur, which was just kind of up to no good, and then the dog, which was like the loyal, playful one. And so it's not that. I just, maybe it was too general and not specific enough for me to like attach to either of the characters, really, other than like I'm observing these characters going through this thing. I don't feel a connection to them. And so maybe that's why I kind of like with the love story part of it, I kind of, that didn't really make sense to me or really sit with me, because I just was kind of like, they don't really seem like characters yet. I mean, there's still a lot of self-actualization happening, but there's not, like, it's hard to connect to them, I guess. Kristen Stewart and Steven Yeun both are like giving good performances. I just think that the material that's written for them maybe is just, it didn't give us a chance to really connect with them, and maybe that's just a me problem. I don't know. I do think this would have worked better at a shorter runtime. I wouldn't have felt as like gypped about not connecting to the characters so much if we had less time with them. But I had spent, you know, an hour and a half with them, and I still felt like, I don't know, they're just like generic people. They're not, there's nothing specific about them for me to connect with them. And I think that's just kind of a problem with the premise itself, because there's a lot of them trying to self-actualize and become people. They have human characteristics, but I just didn't connect with them. So it made it kind of a, I don't know if a cold watch is necessarily the right word, but I didn't connect with them. So I would say if this is your thing and you kind of like quirky premises, I think it's worth watching. I don't think it's as effective as it could have been, but I do think it's worth watching for like the first half of it. I really like the beginning where they kind of go into her developing a personality, and then it gets into the relationship stuff, and I don't know, it kind of became less and less interesting as that went on. I don't really have an investment in these people and these robots, which is not always the case. I love a good robot movie. Wild Robot, love it. Wall-E, love it. Iron Giant, probably one of the best movies I've ever seen, honestly. Iron Giant, I just love that movie. Anyway, I am curious that if you end up going to see this movie, what you think about it. I I'm so fascinated by what people are going to think about this movie because at the screening, I couldn't really get a vibe of what people thought of it. It made me laugh, and then, I mean, I guess that's not unusual. I laugh at a lot of stuff. But I just think it wasn't quite connecting with the audience I was a part of. My husband was with me, and he seemed to like it fine. I think he liked it better than I did. And it's not like it's that weird. Anytime I don't like love a movie, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out why. And yeah, I think as I've been working through this, basically, I think why I don't love it is because I feel like I just couldn't connect with the characters. Those are my thoughts about the movie Love Me. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really excited to keep producing stuff in 2025. I have a new computer that I'm filming this on. Hi, new computer. and which will make streaming a lot easier for me. And will make making videos about the games I'm streaming a lot easier. Here's to a great 2025.